should do that again. Hey everybody, welcome back. We are here. We arrived. We are at chapter 13, and this is the final chapter of A Walk to Remember. I don't know if that makes you want to cheer or cry or both, but we have made it, and we're just going to go ahead and jump in. So the last thing that happened was Landon asked Jamie to marry him. When I was 17, my life changed forever. As I walked the streets of Beaufort 40 years later, thinking back on that year of my life, I remember everything as clearly as if it were all still unfolding before my eyes. I remember Jamie saying yes to my breathless question, and how we both began to cry together. I remember talking to both Hegbert and my parents, explaining to them what I needed to do. They thought I was doing it just for Jamie, and all three of them tried to talk me out of it, especially when they realized that Jamie had said yes. What they didn't understand, and I had to make clear to them, was that I needed to do it for me. I was in love with her, so deeply in love that I didn't care if she was sick. I didn't care that we didn't have long together. None of those things mattered to me. All I cared about was doing something that my heart had told me was the right thing to do. In my mind, it was the first time God had ever spoken directly to me. And I knew with certainty that I wasn't going to disobey. I know that some of you may wonder if I was doing it out of pity. Some of the more cynical may even wonder if I did it because she'd be gone soon anyway, and I wasn't committing to much. The answer to both questions is no. I would have married Jamie Sullivan no matter what happened in the future. I would have married Jamie Sullivan if the miracle I had been praying for had suddenly come true. I knew it at the moment I asked her, and I still know it today. Jamie was more than just the woman I loved. In that year, Jamie helped me become the man I am today. With her steady hand, she showed me how important it was to help others. With her patience and kindness, she showed me what life is really all about. Her cheerfulness and optimism, even in times of sickness, was the most amazing thing I have ever witnessed. We were married by Hegbert in the Baptist church, my father standing beside me as the best man. That was another thing she did. In the South, it's tradition to have your father beside you, but for me, it's a tradition that wouldn't have had much meaning before Jamie came into my life. Jamie had brought my father and me together again. Somehow, she'd also managed to heal some of the wounds between our two families. After what he'd done for me and for Jamie, I knew in the end that my father was someone I could always count on, and as the years passed, our relationship grew steadily stronger until his death. Jamie also taught me the value of forgiveness and the transforming power that it offers. I realized this the day that Eric and Margaret had come to her house. Jamie held no grudges. Jamie led her life the way the Bible taught. Jamie was not only the angel who saved Tom Thornton, she was the angel who saved all of us. Just as she'd wanted, the church was bursting with people. Over 200 guests were inside, and more than that waited outside the doors as we were married on March 12, 1959. Because we were married on such short notice, there wasn't time to make many arrangements, and people came out of the woodwork to make the day as special as they could, simply by showing up to support us. I saw everyone I knew: Miss Garber, Eric, Margaret, Eddie, Sally, Carrie, Angela, and even Lou and his grandmother. And there wasn't a single dry eye in the house when the entrance music began. Although Jamie was weak and hadn't moved from her bed in 2 weeks, she insisted on walking down the aisle so that her father could give her away. "It's very important to me, Landon," she said. "It's part of my dream, remember?" Though I assumed it wouldn't be possible, I simply nodded. I couldn't help but wonder at her faith. I knew she planned on wearing the dress she'd worn at the playhouse the night of the play. It was the only white dress that was available on such short notice, though I knew it would hang more loosely than it had before. While I was wondering how Jamie would look in the dress, my father laid his hand on my shoulder as we stood before the congregation. "I'm proud of you, son." I nodded. "I'm proud of you too, Dad." It was the first time I'd ever said those words to him. My mother was in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief when the wedding march began. The doors opened, and I saw Jamie, seated in her wheelchair, a nurse by her side. With all the strength she had left, Jamie stood shakily as her father supported her. Then Jamie and Hegbert slowly made their way down the aisle, while everyone in the church sat silently in wonder. Halfway down the aisle, Jamie suddenly seemed to tire, and they stopped while she caught her breath. Her eyes closed, and for a moment, I didn't think she could go on. I know that no more than 10 or 12 seconds elapsed, but it seemed much longer. And finally, she nodded slightly. With that, Jamie and Hegbert started moving again, and I felt my heart surge with pride. It was, I remembered thinking, the most difficult walk anyone ever had to make. In every way, a walk to remember. The nurse had rolled the wheelchair up front as Jamie and her father made their way towards me. When she finally reached my side, there were gasps of joy and everyone spontaneously began to clap. The nurse rolled the wheelchair into position, and Jamie sat down again, spent. With a smile, I lowered myself to my knees so that I would be level with her. My father then did the same. Hegbert, after kissing Jamie on the cheek, retrieved his Bible in order to begin the ceremony. All business now. He seemed to have abandoned his role as Jamie's father to something more distant, where he could keep his emotions in check. Yet, I could see him struggling as he stood before us. He perched his glasses on his nose and opened his Bible, then looked at Jamie and me. Hegbert towered over us, and I could tell that he hadn't anticipated our being so much lower. For a moment, he stood before us, almost confused, then surprisingly, decided to kneel as well. Jamie smiled and reached for his free hand, then reached for mine, linking us together. Hegbert began the ceremony in the traditional way, then read the passage in the Bible that Jamie had once pointed out to me. Knowing how weak she was, I thought he would have us recite the vows right away. But once more, Hegbert surprised me. He looked at Jamie and me, then out to the congregation, then back to us again, as if searching for the right words. He cleared his throat, and his voice rose so that everyone could hear it. This is what he said. As a father, I'm supposed to give away my daughter, but I'm not sure that I'm able to do this. The congregation went silent, and Hegbert nodded at me, willing me to be patient. Jamie squeezed my hand in support. I can no more give Jamie away than I can give away my heart. But what I can do is to let another share in the joy that she has always given me. May God's blessings be with you both. It was then that he set aside the Bible. He reached out, offering his hand to mine, and I took it, completing the circle. With that, he led us through our vows. My father handed me the ring that my mother had helped me pick out, and Jamie gave me one as well. We slipped them on our fingers. Hegbert watched us as we did so, and when we were finally ready, he pronounced us husband and wife. I kissed Jamie softly as my mother began to cry, then held Jamie's hand in mine. In front of God and everyone else, I'd promised my love and devotion in sickness and in health, and I'd never felt so good about anything. It was, I remember, the most wonderful moment of my life. It is now 40 years later, and I can still remember everything from that day. I may be older and wiser. I may have lived another life since then. But I know that when my time comes eventually, the memories of that day will be the final images that float through my mind. I still love her, you see, and I've never removed my ring. In all these years, I've never felt the desire to do so. I breathe deeply, taking in the fresh spring air. Though Beaufort has changed, and I have changed, the air itself has not. It's still the air of my childhood, the air of my 17th year, and when I finally exhale, I'm 57 once more. But this is okay. I smile slightly, looking towards the sky, knowing there's one thing I still haven't told you. I now believe, by the way, that miracles can happen. The end. So, I was reading an article about A Walk to Remember and like the author and all that stuff. And I think I told you in an earlier video episode, that he took his sister's story and kind of just like made it into a fiction story, into a novel, I guess. So his sister had leukemia and she was dying, and her boyfriend just loved her so much that he was like, let's get married. And she was like, okay, and they got married. And she ended up passing away a year before the movie came out, or before the movie was filmed, something like that. And so he was saying at the end of the novel that it's not clear if Jamie lives or dies, and that's up to the reader. And so, I mean, I feel like when you watch the movie, like, you know that she died. And so, like, you read this and you're like, oh. But there's hope for those of you that want to believe that she's still alive, or that she lived. There's hope. So I hope you enjoyed following along A Walk to Remember. I know I had fun. It was definitely a new task for me. It was like, oh shoot, I got to record the video today because it's 5 o'clock and I still haven't posted. So that was definitely something that's new for me, but it's been fun. And even just for me to actually read the book myself and to share it with you. I hope it's brought you some comfort and some joy in this time. And I guess I should tell you what book we're reading next. So our next book that we're going to be reading is Scouts, which when you guys took the initial vote of what you wanted to read, this came up second place. And I haven't gotten any new books yet because, you know, quarantine, coronavirus, 2020. So this is going to be our next book. And this one I have actually read. I know, shocker. I actually read this one. I got it from the school book fair. A student bought it for me, so that was pretty cool. So for the book fair, you are able to, you have like a little bin, like each teacher gets a bin and you put the books in there that you want, and then you just kind of wait for them to get bought, which is really exciting. So this is one of them that got purchased. Anywho, courtesy of my student and his parents, we are going to be reading Scouts next. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really cool story, very well written. And it does have that, obviously A Walk to Remember was more of like the mature read, I guess. Like, I don't see a kid reading this book, obviously. Scouts, I think, is more directed towards a younger audience, but still, I enjoyed it because it was about like adventure and mystery and just growing up. So I think you'll like it as well, and we'll start reading that on Monday. So I will see you there.